Hello, everybody! Welcome back to my little corner of the internet where I will talk about the stories of my life, my work both as a comic book author and a translator, my cats Hey Hey and Serengeti, and the occasional movie, book, or TV series review and recommendation, as well as some rants if the feeling hits. And oh boy, the feeling hit! I am writing this particular script 2 days after the big Spider Man No Way Home premiere because there's a lot, and I mean a lot, of conversations about the spoilers on the net right now. Now, don't worry, I haven't watched the Spider Man No Way Home yet, so there will be no spoilers on this. I may have spoiled myself accidentally by reading someone's untagged photo description, but I am not going to do that to you. However, the whole conversation got me thinking. So, first, an actual spoiler warning. I will be discussing very important plot details for Star Wars A New Hope, Armageddon, Lord of the Rings Fellowship of the Rings, Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, Titanic, Chernobyl, Nights Out, and Ghostbusters Afterlife, even when I haven't seen that one yet either. And with that said, let's talk about spoilers. I know that some of you may think that I was kidding about the spoiler alert, given that 4 of the movies I mentioned are at the very least 20 years old, and the 2 that aren't have been already spoiled to hell and back by social media. But I am not. Seriously, if you haven't seen any of those movies and don't want to know about details of the emotional plot lines, please stop watching. I know it will hurt my algorithm chances, but I'd rather have low views than you guys missing out a great emotional first response. Because, see, that's what spoilers do to a story. They don't really spoil the movie, book, or TV show in question, because no matter if you know what happens or not, if the story is good, knowing certain details of it in advance is not going to make it bad. And conversely, if the whole thing hinged on a big gotcha surprise moment, it was a bad story even if they get you with that gotcha moment. Joke or no joke, I find it hard to believe that anyone went to watch Titanic in 1997 not knowing that the ship was going to sink in the end. Or watch the Chernobyl TV series in 2019 and think everyone was going to come out alive and well after the disaster. However, I don't think anyone knew how Cameron was going to shoot the deaths of so many people, or how Chernobyl was going to tear out our hearts out when showing the deaths of the firemen who were the first responders. Hell, even when now it's a huge joke, there isn't a single frame in the Titanic trailer of the hugely debated wood door. You could walk out of watching the trailer and not know the second most talked about scene of the movie unless you actually, watch the movie. And given that that scene is the emotional payoff of the whole thing, it was kind of important that we didn't know about it, even if, yes, we knew that the boat sank and pretty much 85% of the people we saw on the screen died. And for those who think that it's impossible to review a movie without spoiling it, notice how I just talked about Titanic without actually saying what is that scene. If you have seen the movie, you know what scene I am talking about because I mentioned the wood door and the debate. But if you are one of those 20 people that haven't watched it, well, you are a bit puzzled, maybe intrigued. But if you somehow have gotten to 2021 without watching Titanic or knowing the big spoilers, don't Google Titanic Good Door. Just watch the movie. As much as I don't love it, it's a good movie. And it's better to watch that scene and get why it was the emotional sucker punch that it was before you get into why the internet is still arguing about it right now. In fact, if I had many comments down this video, I would bet that 2 or 3 of them would be about the damn wood door. I used to say I didn't care much about the spoilers. As a writer, I don't care if you tell me that the story ends in point B. I want to know how the characters got from point A to point B. If point B is an emotional scene, I want to know if the writer earned that emotional payoff, and that is something I am only going to know if I follow the story myself and not by second-hand retellings. However, there are certain emotional payoffs that can be ruined if you already know the end result, you know? And by that, I mean character deaths. The big spoiler, if you ask me, because that scenes are, more often than not, the moment in which the writers decide to become part of that death cult in Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom and grab your beating heart out of your chest while grinding maniacally. In 1998, I was in line to get tickets for Armageddon. I know now that we consider that movie pretty bad, and well, it's a Michael Bay movie. No way to spoil a Michael Bay movie, right? Wrong. See, I'm a big Bruce Willis fan. I just bought a beer because Bruce Willis promoted it and I do not drink beer, Bruce Willis fan. And Armageddon was going to be the very first Bruce Willis movie that I would see in the big screen instead of renting it or watching on TV. However, right before it was my turn to buy my ticket, a former friend who was next to me said, "Oh, I saw this last week. Bruce Willis dies at the end, right?" Armageddon is, still, to this date, the one Bruce Willis movie I have not watched, because I just can't find it in myself to even care for his character and his character arc because I already know he dies. I can't forget that he will die, and so every scene prior is going to be with the express knowledge that the writers are using that scene to build up to his death, and so any emotional punch is completely and utterly ruined. And given that the rest of the movie is not precisely Oscar material to the point that even the other actors in it question the plot, yes, I am giving it a pass. And that is, unfortunately, what happens most of the time when a death is spoiled. You just can't connect emotionally with the character because you know they are going to be gone by the time you get to the end. Unless, of course, you have an extraordinary writer and a superb actor in place for this, as was the case with Boromir in Lord of the Rings. I am not going to say that everyone who went to watch Fellowship of the Rings back in 2001 had read the books and knew that Boromir was going to die. But I am pretty sure that most of the ones who went to the premiere did, because as mainstream as it has become, and as cool as the books have always been, they were still fantasy, and fantasy was a niche back then. Yes, cat. So yeah, no worries about the spoilers for a book that was published 50 years earlier, and no one was going to gasp in shock and cry their hearts out when Boromir finally faced his last battle, right? Except... oh, very much except. Between the great adaptation of J.R.R. Tolkien's prose and the amazing acting by Sim Bean, I remember people who originally hated Boromir, me included, going pale at the sight of the Uruk-hai because we knew what was coming. Who cried at seeing the Steward Prince of Gondor fall to his knees, covered in arrows, knowing that help would not come in time. Because in the 2 hours and change of the movie, Sim Bean had made Boromir into a man that no one could hate, even if he was a bit stubborn and even if he fell to the ring's temptation. We fell in love with Boromir, and because of that, his death, even if we knew it was coming, pretty much broke our hearts to the point that my voice breaks every single time I talk about that scene. So yeah, even if we knew Boromir died, and well, nowadays, once we know Sin Bean is cast as a character, we know he dies. That's like spoiler by casting choice. The road the movie took to get us there made it so that even knowing what was to come, there was an emotional payout. Same thing that happens with Titanic. Yes, we know the ship sinks, but it's how it sinks and what happens when it sinks, and the people we got to know about either die or survive, what makes the sinking of the ship actually matter. It's like, yes, you come to see a Godzilla movie because Godzilla is in the movie. But you need a little bit more than that to make the movie enjoyable and great, right? I mean, here's the thing. Showing up just for Godzilla when the movie is Godzilla vs. Kong, really satisfactory. But if the movie is Godzilla from 1998, well, yeah, no. That's not even the real Godzilla. So you obviously feel as if something is missing. So, yes, knowing that X or Y happens might not spoil the story or the movie, but it may spoil the experience. Not every death scene is Boromir's last stand, and not every ship that sinks is the Titanic, and thus, not all spoilers are the same. For example, and once again, I beg you to stop here if you haven't seen the movie and you are interested in it. Knives Out. Knives Out is a movie with three different plot twists that, while some very keen eyed mystery fans may have guessed from the get go, are the whole structure of the movie. Two of them can be spoiled accidentally, or even in purpose, and will not affect the third one. But if you spoil the third one, then the whole point of the movie is gone. The mystery of the movie itself becomes a paint by numbers job of I am only watching this because the actors are good and not an actual thriller movie. In fact, the very first twist is in a blink and you miss it moment in the trailer, which is not really good because some people don't blink and thus know the answer to the first question the trailer asks before the trailer asks it. But well, trailers these days do that. That's why I try to avoid trailers of movies I actually want to watch. And it is how the patriarchs of the Thornbury family was killed, not who killed him, and not why the who killed him, which are far more important questions than the how he was killed. And you will tell me, well, the way of death is not so important. I mean, knives are probably in the equation, given that the title of the movie is Knives Out. And if not, what does it matter if it is a gun or something else? Well, it does matter, because when you know how, you are pretty much going to figure out that why is far more important than who, and I have already said too much because if you want to enjoy the movie, me talking more about it is going to take out all the fun out of it, and also it's going to start sounding like a grammar class with all the what, who, why, when, and how questions that I'm making. Now, all the spoilers I have talked about before are plot points, mostly around characters dying because those are usually the big spoilers. Uncle Ben dies is the old joke when it comes to Spider Man spoilers, and that's the only Spider Man spoiler I will ever say in this video. But there are others of the kind, some of which are so ingrained in pop culture that I can't believe that there are people who know the spoiler and have not seen the original movie. Things like Darth Vader's relationship to Luke and his true identity, the fact that Rosebud was not, in fact, a plant, that Romeo and Juliet doesn't have a happy ending, which, granted, was obvious from the original title, The Tragedy of Romeo and Juliet, but still. And what exactly Norman Bates does when he decides to listen to Mama. And yet, there are other stories, some of them older, in which people will fight to keep the spoilers out of general earshot. I mean it too. I have yet to meet any Agatha Christie fan who will discuss the finer points of the murder of Roger Ackroyd, and then there were none, and even the murder at the Orient Express, unless they're absolutely sure that you have read the books. Even if you know the killer's identity because you saw an adaptation in all but name of the books, they will still not spoil the original book to you. But again, those are plot points, and I digressed. There are other spoilers now that people are in the fence about how bad they are, and those are what I call the cameo spoilers. Who appears or not on the movie can be a spoiler, especially if it is a sequel and the person in question is already identified as a character inside sequel. To put it this way, when we knew that Mark Ruffalo was slated to appear in Iron Man 3, well, it was obvious that Bruce Banner would be there. And there was a slight possibility that the Hulk would also make an appearance. Some other cameos are not that big of a deal. Like, say, Bill Murray in Zombieland 1, which I only mention because, let's be honest, everyone talked about that one a week after the movie premiered. But still, talking about it may ruin the surprise for someone else, and it's like telling someone what they got for a Secret Santa a week before they get the gift. The two latest movies that suffer from this kind of spoilers are precisely Spider Man No Way Home and Ghostbusters Afterlife. No, I don't know who appears and doesn't appear in Spider Man No Way Home. But I know that the speculation previous to the movie made it seem as if some viewers would be happy if the whole movie was certain three actors talking to each other in front of a brick wall with the occasional commentary from Benedict Cumberbatch and maybe a fourth actor. And those two actors I mentioned at the end, well, only because one appears on the trailer and the other said that he was coming back to his role on the MCU in the next MCU movie, which must be really frustrating to every single other person involved in the production because, come on, there's more to be seen in Spider Man. And at the same time, why take away the chance to be surprised from those who didn't get to see it in the very first viewing? This is even more important when the cameo is either unexpected or emotionally charged, as it was the case with the one in Ghostbusters that got spoiled because every single reviewer decided to use that scene where it happens as a banner for their reviews, in a sense making it that so any emotional impact said cameo would have was diminished. I mean, yes, a lot of people wanted to see the cameo. A lot of people were expecting the cameo, but it would have been different if they had had the chance to actually be surprised that they were right, rather than checking it in an article review that was actually complaining that the movie was only about nostalgia. What the hell, reviewers? And sure, having a movie spoiled is not going to ruin anyone's life forever. It is, at the end of the day, just a movie. However, for anyone who loves giving spoilers without any regards for other people, just consider that not giving a spoiler costs absolutely nothing, and again, no one gives out prizes for being the first one who saw a movie, right? So just be a little bit more considerate. I want to thank my dear patrons, Mitch Hyman, Elaine Ho, and Jessica, as well as my first supporter, Tania Pineda, and the best person in the universe, Amy Sung, without whom these videos would not be possible. I also want to remind you that if you want to support these and my other projects and get your name mentioned here, you can do so at patreon.com/Alisa. Write a link on description with my link tree, as I know my name can be hard to spell, and with just $1 a month you will always be thanked in my videos, as well as get access to a ton of art before anyone else. If you can't support me this way, I also accept likes, subscriptions to the channel, comments so that the algorithm catches engagement, and of course, just sharing the links. And of course, I also welcome all your questions, comments, and suggestions in the comments below. Just please, 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 let's not start the wood door debate again.